Well, hello. Welcome again to the Alan Hudson Podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. I have to say, it was a fantastic privilege sitting here every week talking to great names from the past, people with fantastic careers. And we've got someone else who fits that category perfectly. And you can see him now. It's Alex McLeish. Alex, thanks very much for joining us.
Pleasure, guys. How's it going, Alan?
Alan,
Well,
have you got any words of welcome for Alex?
Well, I have, but I can't see it because I'm sitting behind. It's like I'm.
Oh, you're sitting behind the computer. Yeah, you're sitting behind it. Yeah.
And I'm. This is not very. It's not a great experience because I like to look people in the eyes when I'm speaking. But we had a chat in the week, Alex, which was great. And now, we might be going to football tomorrow. I'm going to Wimbledon, but it's great to have you on, mate. Anyway, you're one of the. Top of the list with as we spoke the other day. I'm a great lover of Scottish football, of the past, not the present. I suppose I was fortunate enough to meet Jock Stein on tour and have a day at the races with the great man. So and I've had a couple of run-ins with Fergie, but it's from them downwards. To have you on is a great pleasure and honour, mate.
No, brilliant, Alan. Great to see you again, pal. Yes.
Lovely.
Well, can we go back to the very beginning of your playing career, Alex? Just tell us how it all started for you.
It was just, I was playing for a Glasgow boys club team. I mean, nowadays you've got academies and all that stuff, and there wasn't quite that level back then. And a few of my pals in the team were getting S forums with Rangers, Celtic, other teams. And I thought, what am I doing wrong, And I thought, when am I going to get spotted by a scout or whatever, a team anywhere? And then one day we played in a final, Glasgow Green, I think it was. And we won. And the manager at that time was a guy called Alan McLeish, Aberdeen's manager, who became the Scotland manager. And Ali came to the sidelines. The chief scout told him that it's the guy with the red hair in that team. And then during the game, Alan McLeish sidled up to him and said, I actually like the guy in the other team better than the guy you pointed to. And the scout looked at his notes again and says, oh, shit, I've got the wrong guy. You're right. He said, and the two centre-halves had ginger hair. So that was why he kind of get mixed up a wee bit. And then at the end of the game, he said, yeah, I like him. And the scout came to my house on the Monday and said, we want to take you to Aberdeen as an apprentice professional. And I thought, well, none of the Glasgow teams have come for me or an English team. I was going to do a trial with Luton Town, but when Aberdeen gave me the offer, I thought, right, no, I'm heading up to Pittodrie. And little did I know that it was going to be a plethora of success and loads of medals. So, and working with some great managers, Ali McLeod, Billy McNeil, and Sir Alex Ferguson. After him, there was Ian Porterfield, was a gaffer for a while. Sadly, Ian passed away. And then we had a guy called Alex Smith. And then my teammate, my captain, Willie Miller, was my manager the year that I left the club. And he made me an offer that I could refuse. And I went to Motherwell for the first managerial job of my career. And that was the journey to where I am now.
Absolutely. Would we know who that other ginger fella was who played centre back?
No, he played in. So I played for a team called Glasgow United, and the other team I think were from Greenock or something like that. And I don't think that the other guy went to any great success or anything, or to senior level, but Billy McNeill, obviously, Alan McLeod, obviously, had a look at the game, and he started to focus on the other guy with the red hair, which was me. So thank God for that. I could have been snubbed, but that was the start. And then it was an introduction of boys club. I played for a junior team in Aberdeen for a few months. Then I get called up to the reserves, and then finally in the first team. So that was the start of the journey.
Well, you played, I think, more than 600 games for Aberdeen, didn't you? But you were telling me before we came on air, there were several moments where you came close to moving to an English club.
Yeah, there was talk. Every time I went to England, and during my managerial career with Birmingham and Aston Villa, we went to dinners, and I obviously I'd meet other managers, and Brian Clough told me he tried to get me to Forest, and he said, but Sir Alex didn't take his call. And
Alex, you're being very modest. You did a brilliant Brian Clough impersonation a minute ago before we came on here. You got to repeat that.
Well, he said something to the effect of, young man, I tried to buy you once. Your manager put the fucking phone down on me. So excuse my French. I shouldn't swear. Put the phone down on me. And in those days, there was no agents or anything, and you could not walk out of a club even when your contract was finished. The club still held you, and then Terry Neal told me at a dinner as well. He tried to take me down the road as well. Spurs were in talks also, and that kind of dream of playing in England never materialised. But I had a great career with Aberdeen, and then I had some great success with my boyhood team, Glasgow Rangers. And then I wanted to try my hand in the English Premier League.
If you had your choice, Alex, what team would you have picked at that time if you had your choice?
Yeah, good shout. Alan, God. So Forest were riding high at that time, It was kind of, just round about the European Cup successes. After that, it was after that, obviously, but Clough was still there, and with Spurs, I'm trying to remember the Spurs. I would have went to Spurs because I really felt like Stevie Archibald would have been great for me, and being in the same team as him, and Stevie said that I was the missing link. Stevie was on the phone all the time. He says, "You're the missing link, and they need a centre half of your calibre." But anyway, it never happened, and sliding doors and all that stuff, and so I went into the managerial business, coaching, and after Motherwell, Hibernian, and then Rangers, I went down to England and did Birmingham, Aston Villa, Forest, funnily enough, for a wee while, and it's never easy when you don't have money to spend, but in that kind of era, the Premier League wasn't what it is now.
I was quite interested how you told me the other day when you were talking about the Glasgow Rangers, and I'd have been an obvious choice would have been yourself in my eyes, but your reply was about never going back, because of the way the football is ran now by people upstairs, and people were on laptops and everything else, and you got to watch what you say, and you're always kind of looking over your shoulder. Would that be right?
Well, I think you just have to adapt to the current ways and stuff. I'm a little bit bored with some of the teams trying to pass it out to the back, and seeing utter failures when the goalkeeper maybe gets caught even with a ball sitting his or her feet. And I've seen it in the girls' game as well. And somebody nicks in and takes it away from your toes and passes it in the net, you know. So Alex Ferguson back in the day would have had kittens if our goalkeeper tried anything like that, you know, and you know, to pass it amongst the back four, you know, unless you've got great players, you know, back in the day, Guardiola, but the Barcelona managers way back were the advocates of the passing from the back, because they had players who had trained and some players who actually were outfield players. So you get that. But then it's become widespread, and over the years, obviously now the goalkeepers are at a very well, they should be at very high levels in terms of passing it out from the back. They can control it like any other outfield player, and they can, some of them incredible passers of the ball. You know, the Liverpool goalies, for instance, pinging it 50, 60 yards onto a what we'd have called a sixpence back in the day, but a 5-pence piece, you know. So that's the game's changed a wee bit, and I've got a wee bit bored with it over the last year or so, a couple of years, in terms of watching people trying to build up. They get to the halfway line, doesn't work, turn back, go back to the goalie again, and then we'll start again. But the teams who have excited me are you know, like the teams who still get the ball at the back but go forward at breakneck speed are the Madrids, the Barcelonas, the top teams in the Premier League. In fact, nearly the whole Premier League does it. Maybe the teams at the bottom try and keep the goal shut a wee bit more. But you know, when you see Bournemouth, Brighton, you know, teams like that, who, like, let's face it, 10, 15 years ago, you would never have said they'll be in the English Premier League at some stage. Incredible.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. They're top teams, aren't they?
They are brilliant athletes.
Going back to the goalkeeping situation, and then we'll go back onto that. But the goalkeeping situation, what makes me laugh, you know, when you're out and about and you're talking to people, and you go back to your school days, but goalkeepers actually come about because when there was kids in the playground or in the street or whatever, if there was, say, 14 kids and you had a 7-a-side, the last 2 that got picked weren't good enough to play. They were always left till last, so they got put in goal, didn't they?
Well, that was definitely the kind of
so that gives you some indication of why they're in goal. You know, because they can't play the game.
Aye. Well, back in the day, that was definitely the kind of, right, you go in goals, you know, to the guy who maybe wasn't the best player, but by God, some of them could play outfield nowadays. You know, when you look at the control of them, the passing of the long passing, even at times, and you know, the very best are you know, playing with all the best clubs. So there's no doubt about that. But I think that, you know, people might be on watching this and saying, "Oh, look at the old dinosaurs there," you know. But the one thing that if you see a corner for somebody nowadays and the ball comes in, it doesn't get executed, but you've still got possession of it, but you're getting pressed, and they took all the way back to the goalie again, who's now in the halfway line, which is where he should be, because you don't want him away back in his own box. Just like in the days like Sir Alex told Jim Leighton to stay on his line, and that Alex McLeish and Willie Miller will get everything, so you stay in your line, Jim. And that was a kind of, not only Jim, other goalkeepers that Sir Alex had at that time. But that's a measure of how the game has changed dramatically.
Can we just explore your Aberdeen team for a minute, Alex? Because there were some fantastic players in that team. I mean, you mentioned Willie Miller, Gordon Strachan, Steve Archibald. I mean, there were a lot of really terrific players.
Archie was there in the European. He'd gone to Spurs by then, and he had kind of been into Sir Alex's office every day. In fact, Sir Alex left a chair outside his room and called it Stevie Archibald's chair. And because Stevie was coming in every morning, first thing in the morning, chapping the door, when can I get away? Well, I want to go down to England. And Sir Alex eventually sold him to Spurs, but he put a wee chair outside his office and called it the Archibald chair. So Stevie got his wish of going down and playing in England, and then of course with Terry Venables, he went to Barcelona.
What was your relationship like with Sir Alex at Pittodrie?
Did I get the right name there? Yeah, aye, Terry.
Terry took him to Barcelona with Mark Hughes.
Yeah, I think there was a few. Did Lineker go as well at some
I think he did, yeah. Well, that was when Terry went there after Tottenham, and he'd had Lineker at Tottenham, I think, Al.
Aye.
Yeah. But going back to Jim Leighton, is it true the story that remember the game at Wembley when he played, and then it might have been the Palace game, I don't know, and then he left him out of the replay. I was at the replay when they beat Manchester United, beat Palace 1-0, but they reckon after the game, I think it was a 3-3 game. I think it was a famous game when Ian Wright came on, wasn't it, and scored.
That's
2.
right. Yeah.
Well, they reckon after the game he was walking out the dressing room, Alex, at Wembley, and Jim Leighton said, as he turned around to Jim Leighton said, "Sorry, Alex," he said, I should have kept my legs closed. And Alex said to him, "No, Jim," he says, "your mother should have left her legs closed."
Oh, God's sake! No, I don't.
Well, that came out that Alex did say that, so I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Well, you know that I wasn't there for that one. Obviously Manchester, whatever, but I certainly don't want to go into print saying something like that. But if it was true, then maybe it's written somewhere. I don't know. But I know that he loved Jim, and Jim was a brilliant goalkeeper for him at Manchester, at Aberdeen, and we won a lot together, and including European Cup, Winners' Cup, and we actually won the Super Cup as well, beating Hamburg that season. And Jim is a legend, and it just didn't quite work out in the Man United scenario, which Sir Alex did what he did many times, and he ended up winning an avalanche of trophies. So you have to kind of respect the guy who was something of a football icon.
You neatly swerved this question of mine a couple of minutes ago, but I've got to put it to you again because everyone watching this will want to know what your relationship was like with Sir Alex when you were at Aberdeen.
It was great. I mean, it was. Listen, if you didn't do what you wanted when he wanted, and then he was definitely in your face, And but I think the strength of the guys in the dressing room were such that, well, I'll show you, boss. It was more taking up the challenge. It was. There was other managers in Scotland at the time, Jim McLean, Dundee United, who were even when the team won, it might not be sad. They won 5-0. Dundee United, I heard famously back in the day, and the manager went mad with one of the players, so I guess certain characters over the years in the game and get there because of some certain traits that they have, but Sir Alex obviously went to a whole different level with the Manchester United move, and I think that's been a phenomenal career added to what he did at Aberdeen.
Fantastic. So tell us about the fame. Obviously, you beat Real Madrid in the European Cup Winners' Cup final, 1983, was it?
83, yeah, last team to beat Real Madrid in a European final. So I think if you check the record books, they've won every final they've been in since. And that was the Cup Winners' Cup, of course, but Sir Alex at the end of the game was ecstatic, and I had a hand in two of the goals. I made a goal for Eric. It was Eric Black, the first goal, and then I had a pass back that stuck in the water, and they got a penalty. So Real Madrid scored from that, and at the end, you're kind of thinking, "Oh, I made a mistake," but then you got to try and not beat yourself up and say, it was meant to happen for us to win that cup. That's what was meant to happen, and that made me a little bit happier after the game. But Sir Alex came in, did the showers right after the game. I was last out. I was kind of feeling sorry for myself, and he says, "Listen, done brilliant. You made a mistake, and then you could have crumbled and buried yourself in the sand, I guess." He said, "But you kept going, and to see us not losing a goal to the mighty Real Madrid right at the end, the death, they were trying everything to get back at us. We were 2-1 up, and we held for them. So
well done, Al. Well done.
So I made two
mate.
goals that night.
Yeah. We got something in common, mate. We both beat Real Madrid in the final, but
in the same competition as well.
Same competition.
Scott was that 71 or something.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the one, Al. But you got 77 caps, didn't you?
Yeah.
What were your finest moments playing for your country, mate?
Well, unbelievably, one of my first ever games. Well, my first game was against England, and I was playing in midfield that season, and Trevor Brookin was in midfield, and I thought, I'll just stick a few on him and see if we can silence this so-called great player. But you know what? I could not get near that guy. He was really? He was like a hovercraft over the Hampden surface, and so strong, and it, unbelievably quicker than I would ever have thought. Trevor Brown, big man, a big lad, very, very strong. But we lost that game, and then fortunately next season I was back to centre half, and I think it was 1981. We beat England at Wembley. No, it wasn't 81. God, that was it. So anyway, we beat England 1-0. John Robertson scored a penalty. Steve Archibald was brought down by Brian Robson, and it was the Scotland fans were supposed to be banned from the game, and they actually, when I went in, the Wembley's changed a wee bit now, but when I come out the dressing rooms and I looked at the crowd, and I couldn't see anything but Scotland fans. And I said, wait a minute. And the day before, apparently they were dancing in the fountain in city centre and stuff. And that quite incredible to walk out and see the whole end filled with Scottish fans. And Robbo scored the penalty. Steve Archibald was brought down by Robson. And that was one of the most memorable games. You're beating England at Wembley.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But who was what kind of players? Who was in the come and went? And for 77 caps is over quite a long period. You played with like Dalglish. It was around that time.
Yeah, Kenny. Yeah. He was incredible. I think you could probably, when you see the world class Leo Messi, who knows where everybody is on the pitch, it's in his brain. Kenny was a bit like that. He knew where people were. He knew where defenders were. He had that elusiveness in the box, and it wasn't like lightning fast or anything, but what a brain. And it was a great pleasure to play with him for Scotland. We famously beat Spain, one of the qualification games one night, 3-1 at Hampden, and Kenny scored this goal where from a throw-in, and we threw the ball to him, and he dummied the defender, got behind him on his left foot and curled one right into the top bin. And I thought, wow, we're playing with genius here, and I could not believe my ears when Kenny said that night after the game, "Do you fancy, is your wife's at the game? I heard, do you fancy coming for a glass of beer with my wife and I?" Oh, wow. Pals with Kenny Dalglish now. And but yeah, what a player.
Talking about pals, I had a great pal for a year or two come and play with me in Seattle. We had the best team ever at Seattle that time and broke all the records. He must have played with you for Scotland. Tommy Hutchinson.
Hi, Big Tommy. Yes. Aye, terrific.
Great character.
Again, I never got the chance to play with him, but the legends, they've all got their place in Scotland, and Tommy was one of them. Absolutely brilliant.
I thought you were going to say
he was a big giant of a guy as well, wasn't he? And
he's a big lad for a winger. He was a big
boy.
Yeah,
I know. It was a thing back in the day. I think there was a few tall wingers in those days, and they could run like the wind, and Tommy was one of them.
Fantastic player, yeah. Talking of fantastic players, did you ever study Charlie Cook?
Oh yeah, Charlie had a bit of a cult following, in Scotland, and when, especially was it Wembley in 1967 when we beat the world champions. I'm not sure if it was that year that Charlie was playing, but
no, he didn't play in that game. Timmy Johnson was right wing, I think.
He wasn't in that game, but he was. No. So there was other games that he was in, I'm sure.
We had Charlie on the other couple of weeks ago, and he played one game in particular at Hampden, Alex. And he was absolutely outstanding for Scotland against a good English side.
Do you know what? It kind of, when I see Chelsea nowadays, the wingers, Portuguese wingers, Chelsea have got. It was his name right now. Neto. I'm thinking that's a throwback, because he tries to beat people. He's trying to beat people with speed, and he's crossing the ball on the run and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, what? Charlie Cook was like that. And that's a wee bit of a throwback. I know that we all have our opinions about the modern day and the games in the past, and but I would have thought these guys were alike. Would you agree with that, Alan?
I would. Charlie probably he did things a lot slower than Neto. He could. I mean, Charlie's strength was he could. His ability wise, he was second to none. Alex, he was a dribbler. He was fabulous. He was absolutely fabulous. But he did everything in his own time, and he would. I'd see him one night at Stamford Bridge. It always sticks out in my mind. It's a great example if I ever got a Charlie Cook, and I played with him a lot. I played Liverpool at the Bridge one night, and he picked up a ball. about 35 yards out on the right hand side of, as if he was going to go into the box, and Emily Hughes confronted him, and Emily Hughes was left back for Liverpool that time, and he went to go for him, and Charlie, he used to do a thing called the rollover. He put his foot on top of the ball. He'd roll the ball as if he was going to pass it, and your eyes would follow it, and Emlyn followed the ball, and he pounced on the ball, and Charlie, with his studs, dragged it back and left him up with one arm on the floor and one arm and one knee, and the crowd, even the crowd behind the goal went, and he just turned to the right, and then obviously it was plain sailing. There was no left back, was there? He was out for the count, Emlyn. It was as if he'd have been hit by Sonny Liston, It was, but that was his forte, and he had this. He came down to Chelsea, and there were times in training where the lads would try and do this. I tried it a couple of times in matches. It worked, but I could never get it off to the art that he had it off to. He was just a magician, when he had the ball.
So I'll see that 67 game when Scotland beat England at Wembley 3-2. Jim Baxter was Charlie. I'm sure Charlie was in that game, was he?
No, he didn't. Good job he didn't, because it'd have been. I got a feeling it would have been. I'm sure Jimmy McCalliog played, didn't he?
Jim McCalliog, yeah.
Jim McCalliog, Dennis Law played and scored. Jimmy scored. You'd have had one other up front from Celtic.
Bobby Lennox, was it?
Bobby Lennox, Bobby Lennox. Obviously Bremner played with, and Baxter was the playing keeper up. When he was, had his own little. I mean, I can remember.
Now you're testing me. Now you're testing me. I mean,
well, it's a hard team to, unless you were there or watched the game recently.
I was about 9 years old, and I watched it on telly.
I can tell. I've got the team in front of me.
Aye.
I could tell you what it was. The Scotland team was Ronnie Simpson in goal.
Yes.
Tommy Gemmell right back. John Gregg, Ronnie McKinnon, Eddie McCready.
Wow.
Jim Baxter, Billy Bremner, Jim McCalliog, Dennis Law, Bobby Lennox, and Willie Wallace.
Willie Wallace. I wouldn't have got Willie Wallace. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So no, what a team! So we actually became unofficial world champions when we beat England at Wembley 3-2 because
I like it, Alex. I like it.
Because you won the '66 World Cup final, and I think we might have been the first team to beat England after that final. So we're claiming the '66 World Cup final.
Well, I don't blame you for that, mate. I don't blame you for doing that, because England had an excuse that Jack Charlton got injured and he had to go up front or something, and something else happened. But as I said to you the other day, and I think it would be all right to say it on the show, that I think I would argue with anyone that around those times, if England fielded their best 11 and Scotland fielded their best 11, I would back Scotland every time. There's not a problem. I think when they come down to it, the Scots come down to England, they kind of. The English game wouldn't have been the same without them. There's so many,
the home internationals, yeah.
Yeah, and like Dave Mackay, but I was like you mentioned, you was 9 when you watched that game. My dad used to take me to Tottenham when they won the double in 61, 62. I was actually 10 then, Alex.
Right.
So and Dave Mackay and the very unfortunate John White, who got struck down by lightning on the golf course, didn't he? What a footballer! The Scots just had so many great players came down here and kind of took over. And obviously, when Tommy Dockey took over Chelsea, that was his main hunting ground. You know, he would,
Yeah.
you know, he had so many Scottish players at Chelsea. It was unbelievable. And then obviously Tottenham had them, and then they started going not so far down the motorway and dropping off at Liverpool and Manchester United, didn't they? You know.
Yeah.
But Tommy
absolutely.
was the instigator in all that, I think.
Yeah. But well,
Did you know Tommy, Alex?
Tommy Gemmell.
No, Tommy Docherty. Did you ever come across him?
Oh yeah, oh God, yeah. A few times I met him. Yeah.
That was a character, mate.
He was a hard character. Yeah. I met him. I didn't really, you know, become close to him or anything like that. But I met him a few times, and you know, he was definitely a Scottish ledge. Yeah. Scottish
Alex,
legend.
can I ask you? I mean, you talked about Scotland being the world champions in '67. What a great team. Great players in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And no disrespect to the modern day players, but Scotland don't seem to create players like they used to. Why would that be?
Yeah, I think in recent times we have, at long last, there was a spell there when we weren't sending any players to, or any players were going to England, you know, and then kind of around about John McGinn and Scott McTominay's introduction to Scotland national team, then there's been more and more Scots have been appearing in the English Premier League, you know, and we've got about now the team is at a better level due to the fact that as the years gone by, when we had loads of Anglos playing in the English League, we've now got a right good. Ryan Christie, for instance, has been phenomenal at Bournemouth. Another one of these terrific young players that you might say, you know, people might overlook, and he's deadly dangerous, and so he's in the Scotland setup as well. McGinn, McTominay, who's gone abroad to Napoli, and there's, you know, about 4 or 5 others who are now. Doak, for instance, the young guy Doak, is he on Liverpool's books, but he was loaned out to one of the, I think the teams up Middlesbrough, I think it was, and he's another new kid in the block. So it seems like there's been a missing cycle, and then all of a sudden there's a few coming back again, and the one thing probably we haven't had is a Joe Jordan, a Dennis Law. We probably missing a top killer striker, you know, get a Kenny Dalglish, and yeah. Oh, it'll be 5 minutes.
I think that's a pretty unfair. That's an unfair thing to say anyway about, you know, the Scottish players that they don't produce them like they used to, which they obviously don't. That can be said of. I watched Northern Ireland play in a match the other night, and all that was going through my mind every time Northern Ireland were making a mess of things was our friend George. And, you know, I know no nation has ever produced another George Best and probably never will. But, you know, George Best was, you know, playing for Ireland. I felt he got to be the unluckiest footballer of all time, him and Pat Jennings. You know, they probably, arguably, Pat was as good as any goalkeeper that's ever lived. And George, and they were the only two really in the Northern Ireland team. And George never played in a World Cup finals, you know, not the actual World Cup final itself, but every 4 years. And I'm a great believer in that's what messed George up a lot of the time, you know, when he got involved with the drinking and going to Spain, and because every 4 years he was absolutely. I mean, I missed one World Cup through injury in 1970, and it was devastating. But George was devastated every 4 years. You know, there's Pele and everybody else on the big stage, and that stage is, you know, the greatest stage of all. And George was denied it every 4 years, and I'm sure it was something to do with his overall problems off the field and drinking and all that. Strangely enough, he packed up and then Pat got in the side and Northern Ireland qualified, didn't they, with a Jerry Armstrong goal in Spain, and Pat played in that, I think. So, you know, you look at the Welsh team. You know, in Seattle, I played with Ron Davis. They had people like Ron Davis in the team, and they had some great players.
No, I know the golden oldies. I've got a collection of playing for Rangers, you know, from book 1 down to book 5, and it's all the golden oldie guys, you know. John Gregg was one of my heroes when I was a kid, and Ronnie McKinnon's, and when you look even further back, you know, you think, wow, you know, these guys playing with those lacing balls and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing about the modern day ball is that they come at you like a rocket now. You know, so people say, oh, dementia was because of heading those heavy balls they get soaked in the wet and they became even heavier. But I mean, believe me, if the speed these balls go at now, and I know they're quite light, but they hit you hit it when it's coming at 100 miles an hour, then there's still impacts on that, you know, when you talk about this dementia stuff and all that stuff. I know, don't want to go into that, but that is the difference in the you know, the whole kind of industry of from when I started as a little kid to, you know, the current modern game. But we've all had our we've had our experiences in the beautiful game, and we're still talking about it and still trying to put it right, and I'm
trying to work it out.
And I'm sure we're still working it out.
Yeah. I must ask you, while you're on the subject of your beloved Glasgow Rangers.
Well, I love Aberdeen as well. I mean, I played there all my career, and you know, Rangers were my boyhood team. When I became an Aberdeen player, I always remember players from different clubs asking, "Oh, how did Rangers go on?" You know, how did Celtic go on? Glasgow boys who played for other clubs, they were always more concerned with how Rangers and Celtic got on, because that was their teams. We had a brilliant attitude at Aberdeen where we said, right, wait a minute, if we win this weekend, Celtic win as well, and Rangers get beat, we can still be top of the league, you know. So obviously you've got to do it in a professional way, and you know, so I don't think I'd be walking about the dressing room going to all my pals as I've seen at other clubs and saying, and certainly this didn't happen at Aberdeen. You know, Mark McGee was Celtic, there was others, Gordon Strachan, Dundee United, but we only cared about the Aberdeen result if it benefited Aberdeen. But I saw a lot of boys in my travels in different clubs saying at the end of the game, how did Celtic go on? How did Rangers go on? I said, never mind, just worry about your own team. And that is the fervour that is up in Scotland, you know, between the Old Firm and the rest of the teams.
But what I was going to say, Al, although that's right, I mean, we did this about you. You know, you love both clubs. I mean, but before I get on to what I was going to say, I must tell you a story about Peter Osgood when he was finished. I see him at the bridge one day. One Saturday, he was at the bridge and hugging all the fans. And if you could use the term "kiss the badge," he was doing all that as if Chelsea was the only club on earth. And then the following week, I went to watch a game at Southampton, and he was doing exactly the same thing to all the Southampton fans. So, you know, that was Osgood. But
Yeah.
what I was going to ask you about Glasgow Rangers and in the history of the club, where would you put Paul Gascoigne?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's one of the best players that I think the UK has produced. So, needless to say, it was a bit of a coup when he came to Glasgow Rangers for Walter to get him to come there, and Walter Smith, the late Walter Smith, and late great Walter Smith, and Gaza was a machine. I remember playing against some Scotland, England, and I thought, oh, right, I've got Gaza and I were running for the same ball, and I thought I'll just give him the shoulder, knock him down and out of it. And do you know what?
Scottish kiss.
Do you know what? He didn't budge. He did not budge. That's when I realised this guy wasn't only a good footballer, he was as strong as an ox.
Yeah.
And it was knocking into a statue. And I bounced off him, and I thought, geez, I thought I could just like mangle him and get the ball off him, but he's a terrific player in many different ways.
Yeah. I don't think Great Britain produced him, Alex. I think he fell out of the sky somewhere. He fell out of a different planet in down here because he was in a world of his own, wasn't he? You know.
He was. I know him and McCoist were like blood brothers. Alan McCoist. Yeah.
It sounds like you might be dragged away from the podcast any minute soon.
She's looking
can I just ask you one question? I mean, we haven't touched on your managerial career, but I mean, so many great clubs. Of course, you managed Scotland twice. What was the highlight of your managerial career?
Well, it has to be Rangers because of the trophies that I amassed there against a very good Celtic team and a very great manager in Martin O'Neill. So in my spell there, we won, and there was a couple on the last day. You won 2 leagues on the last day, but it showed you how close the teams were. They had John Hartson, Henrik Larsson. They had a lot of other tremendous players. I had Barry Ferguson. I had Peter Lovenkrantz. I had Ronald de Boer, the Dutch maestro on the pitch. Michael Malls, Arthur Newman. We had a lot of Dutch players because Dick Advocat had previously brought them. But they were at that time, the Dutch were at a very, very high level. And in 2 of those seasons, I was absolutely ecstatic to be able to beat a really, really good Celtic team against a top manager, Martin O'Neill.
Yes, he was.
And twice you was manager of Scotland, of course.
Twice manager of Scotland. I never thought I would. I did say, oh no, I'll do the Scotland job when I get a bit older. And then when you get the call, though, it's a different story, and they actually, when I said, no, I'm not going to, I'm going to stay in club football. And then when they came, I said, you know what, how can I refuse my country, and I really felt so patriotic about it that I could not say no, despite my plan being, no, I wanted to stay in club management and maybe get even more experience and come to the international arena. But when you get asked to go to play, to manage your country, to play for it was absolutely wonderful. Jock Stein gave me my debut, but to be the manager was something special. And it was a rebuild, trying to do some rebuilding. I got McTominay into the squad, and nowadays Stevie Clark's doing a good job. He's, as I said, there's been an influx of players in England that are playing in the best league, the strongest league in the world, that are now eligible for the Scotland team. Some have had to kind of obviously get through the birth the birthday, when they were born, and who the fathers and stuff, and we've done that. McTominay had no hesitation in saying yes when I asked him if he wanted to play for Scotland. So that was a great wee spell for me, and I'm proud to have managed my country. But it was really a rebuild kind of period, and we qualified for the playoffs, and Stevie Clark ended up seeing them through those playoffs to get to a major tournament for the first time in a few years, and I'm glad I played a part in that.
Well done, Alex.
Fantastic. Any final words, Alan, to sign off for Alex?
No, I mean, it's the fascinating thing, obviously, for me, is it's great to. That's why we do the podcast, to get people like Alex on that we've never met, never spoke to. Great, it's great. It obviously.
What about you, Al? What can I ask you a question? What about you? Do you think you could have taken me and Willie Miller to the cleaners?
No, I don't think I'd have really come near you, Alex. I think I might just. I always remember someone asked me about Ron Harris. I said, how hard was Ron Harris? And I've got it on one podcast in somebody else's podcast, and I said, yeah, he was as tough as anyone has been tough. In fact, he went beyond that. He got a thrill out of hurting people, but I played against him 6-7 times for Stoke against Chelsea, and he said, "How did he ever kick you?" I said, "No." I said, "I always, whenever I got the ball at Stoke, because I was an inside forward at Stoke, and that was a game I loved to play, and." I said, wherever Harris was, I used to take it over the other side of the field and play over there and attack down there. So there is a.
That was good tactics.
Well, Alex, that's the beauty of being in possession, isn't it? That's what the game's all about. I'm a great believer in, managers never say it, but and these people on telly never say it, is. I said it to Dave Sexton once, the playing in the position like being a quarterback, really. In America, it's, you're inside forward, and the name of the game for an inside forward is when you get it, to keep it going, but always try and get it to your best player.
Yeah.
You've got more chance of winning any football match if your best players have got the ball. And Dave Sexton used to have a go at me and say, get the ball out to Nobby Houseman, get it out wide. I said, well, he said, why do you keep passing to Osgood? I said, well, if I keep passing to Osgood, we got more chance of winning. He bought it.
I'm getting shout here. And that's for my daughter.
And that is, as a manager, I think you probably never said it, but that's obviously, that's the way you see the game, is that you've got to get the ball. I remember being at Chelsea 2 or 3 years ago, watching them play, and the ball was with the back four for about a third of the game. And and someone asked me on the table afterwards what was wrong, and I said, well, your worst players had the ball all the game. You've got to get they're defenders. It's
no rocket science, is it?
No, it's not rocket science. It's actually the game is a simple game, run by idiots half the time,
Get the ball, give it to the best player, and
absolutely,
look
mate.
for Strachan right away. Gordon Strachan. Gordon, when I get
Fantastic.
the ball, come close to me and I'll give it to you. So that was it. Guys, listen, I'm gonna have to go because this is her computer and she's gone out and to do her work, and that was a great pleasure. And actually, we'll do it again, Alex, when I can get my. I'll need to come and see you and Ray at his club. Yeah. Aye, Sutton. It's Sutton, yeah, Sutton. That's right. I've not been for a couple of years now, but I need to come back. You can't make Wimbledon tomorrow, no? No, I'm going to Chelsea.
Oh, yeah, I've just been invited to Chelsea tomorrow.
Right, well, I'll maybe see you there.
No, I'd rather go to Wimbledon, Alex.
I know. Well, listen, I'll see you in Curragh in subsequent weeks because one of the guys in there invited me tomorrow, but I told him I was Chelsea bound. So
all right, pal.
See you, boys.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Alex. Been great having you on.
Great to see you, Tony. Cheers,
Thank
pal.
you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.